Hey everyone, it's Megan. Alana is busy moving, and since I can't do this without her, this will not be our typical Tea Time Crimes episode. Instead, it's going to be the first entry in our fan favorite contest. So if you haven't heard about it, head over to our socials and check it out. We are going to play a few of your favorite picks, and whoever has the most re-listens will win a prize from our merch store. So please take a moment to enter, to like, to engage, to tell us what your favorite episodes are, and we will replay those until we are back. And also, by the way, I have COVID, which I had for this first fan favorite. What are the odds? So I'm going to take a minute to heal and get better. I've been down for the count, and Alana's going to take a minute to find her microphone. And then we will be back for spooky season because you know it's my favorite. So thank you for understanding. Thank you for being patient, and we'll be back soon. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. This is Megan.
And this is Alana.
And welcome to Tea Time Crimes. I totally spaced. Like, what do I say? Who am I?
I know. I was like, what's this dramatic pause?
I was like, what's the name of this podcast? What's happening?
Who am I? You know.
Who am I? All these existential questions just hit me so hard. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing better than you.
Yeah. I have COVID.
Yeah.
And we just finished the month-long dog isolation, and we were like, that was fun. And so now we're going to go into the COVID isolation. So my son and I have COVID, and we're isolating from Brad. And it's been fun. Yeah.
Yeah. COVID's a great time, huh?
Yeah. We were out of town when we got it, and I didn't realize we had it because everybody we were with started getting a cold, and my son and I got stomach bug. Apparently it can start like that. And then it ended for my son, and it turned into the cold for me. So my voice is a little hoarse still. And I'm definitely tired.
It's a little sexy today.
Is that what you call it? I don't know. Whatever you just did was off the charts. So you could talk like that more often.
Oh, God. I don't think I can handle that.
Yeah. If you have COVID, or you've just been doing this whole pandemic homeschooling or remote learning, you're the superhero.
Yeah, not fun.
Or you're a nurse working in the ICU. Holy moly, I don't know how people do it. We're on a full week of it, and I didn't realize how sick I was. I was telling Alana and Brad, I didn't realize how sick I was because I just started kind of being aware of being in isolation for the last couple of days. I was so out of it.
Yep, wipes you out.
Alana was telling me stuff, and I don't even remember it.
I know, she's like, prove it. And then we had this whole conversation. Not a whole conversation, but
we did.
It was just funny.
Yeah, we had a couple entire conversations. I said, you never told me that. She said, yes, I did. And then sent me the text evidence. Oh, wow. I have totally no memory of that. That's always scary.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I feel okay now, just a hoarse voice, tired, and I like jogged down the hall, and that was not like to get something, not trying to jog. And
it takes it out of you, man. I'm trying to remember. So it's almost a year since my COVID anniversary.
Oh, that's nice.
Back in the Delta Days variant.
The Delta Days. It sounds like a blues song.
And I was just like looking back, and I don't think, like, you can't exercise, you can't do anything for maybe like 2 weeks, and you start going for like walks and stuff and getting that capacity back. But it beats you down even if you're vaccinated.
Yeah, and my body was, I had laryngitis right before, and then I had the surgery right before that. So my body I couldn't blow my nose because I have the stint in still.
I was thinking about that this morning or last night, and I was just like, like the way that makes me feel, just imagining that, I want to die. Like, that
so
sounds impossible.
It's like when you have an itch that you can't get,
so
kind
bad.
of. It's
Yeah, and your nose, and it just like, would it just like leak out of your nose? I guess this is kind
no,
of
it just was all stuffy, and I couldn't blow my nose.
Oh
And
my
I
God, no, I'm
had
out.
I tried a couple of times very lately, and like air blew out my eye. It's like some sort of weird
Stop
cartoon.
it. Oh, that's happened. Ugh, it's all
We're gonna
connected.
just not mess with it because there's a stint in the
It's
eye through the
terrible.
nose, you know.
When you can blow your nose again?
I mean, until it's fully healed. I'll hopefully get the stint removed at the end of the month.
Good Lord. And the end of
Yes,
next month or this month?
yeah, end of August.
Ugh, it's still a while. Oh, my tea's ready.
Okay.
And we're back.
Good Lord, you were gone forever. So tell us about your tea for today.
I am so excited. So one of our special listeners, not sure if they want to be identified or not,
That sounded
but
so weird.
what? One of our loyal followers.
One of our special listeners.
They sent me an amazing whole kit. So it came with a mug.
Ooh.
It came with like the actual tea, loose leaf tea that it's instructions. That's why it took so long this morning, is because you have to boil it, you have to make it, add milk, boil that, strain it.
Just describe making tea. Yeah.
Steep it, everything. Well,
I feel like that's pretty standard.
I don't know if you boil your tea normally, but that was another level. Came with stickers, a strainer, and it even came with, it says, get rich or chai trying. And I love it.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's a whole kit. I'll post it. Thank you so much to that listener. That was really, really special. Chai is could be my favorite tea besides the Irish breakfast. I always go for a chai. I'm really excited. It also came with these cookies.
What are they called?
Oh yeah, you can't read it.
How do you say that?
The listeners can't read it. Parle-G. And I feel like those of you who listen from Los Angeles, if you've ever been to Badmash, I feel like you might get this cookie as a dessert. Badmash also has a nasty chai in a good way.
Are you going to eat it?
I was thinking about eating it with it because it came with it. What do you feel about that?
Okay, yeah. I think that's great, but open it now because otherwise you're going to be trying to open that wrapper for the next 60 minutes. It's going to be Crinkle Fest 2022 over here.
Yeah, it is.
It is what?
Here's some ASMR.
Oh, jeez. Really getting that target audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay. It's a little biscuit, and it says Parle-G, like an English biscuit, if you imagine that.
Yeah. It looks like a digestive.
That's exactly what it smells like, and I think it's perfect to have with tea.
All right, well, you going to try this tea, or?
Okay, are we ready? I was sniffing it earlier. Oh my God. Yeah.
So it's chai tea with milk?
Oh, it smells really good. Oh. Oh, whoa. I just went on a roller coaster. Okay, also though, I told you as I was making it, I read tablespoon instead of teaspoon. So I actually doubled the serving. So it's very strong. So I may be a little hopped up for this podcast.
Oh God, help. Well, you bring the energy today.
But you can go all the way through the chai, right? From the first sip, the first taste of the black tea through the cardamom, ginger. I mean, the other leaves in here. It's beautiful. And the mix is beautiful too. I could show you that as well, but.
Give us a body count.
Oh, it's a full one. It's a body. You could just grab onto it.
Yikes.
Yeah, so this is 2 thrusting thumbs up. This is my cup of tea.
You've never had both thumbs in the mix.
I know, but this is exactly what I love.
Wow.
It's a homemade chai. You know, it has all of the bits and pieces, not just from a tea bag. It's all the actual herbs and cardamom and all that stuff.
Our special listener knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. So I'm going to check out this company, Kolkata Chai Co., because they know how to do it. And also they have stickers and they're funny. So, and they give cookies.
Sounded like gibberish. What's the name of the company?
Kolkata So I think it's kind of a play on Kolkata, which is in India. Kolkata. Well, I don't know. Some people don't know it. What if the
Geography.
5-year-old's listening to this?
They
I just gave
shouldn't
them a
be.
geography lesson. Yeah,
Put
they shouldn't
parental
be.
controls on your podcast.
I think I want to know when there's made. Yeah, it's these cookies are made in India.
Oh no, we're gonna have to hear you snap it and crunching through the whole.
I'll be over here.
Oh, that helps. Yeah. I don't know when
Can
you're
you
going to
still hear
learn.
it?
Yeah, of course. You pulling away from your microphone doesn't help. It just makes the noise more muffled, and we could
Oh.
still hear it. Just get it right up in there.
Oh,
Just
it's
full
nice.
experience.
It's nice. This is so great. I'm just really
Do you
happy
dip
right
your
now.
cookies?
I just did.
Yeah. It broke.
Part of it fell in.
Well, get your teaspoon.
I don't have it. It's okay. It's fine.
Oh my gosh. Your face. All right. 2 thrusting thumbs. You've never, ever, ever given such an emphatic review.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
Wow. All right. Cool. All right. Well, I researched this story right before I got sick and then got sick. So,
Perfect. And then you got COVID brain and caught in the
yeah.
fog.
Yeah, I'm going to do my best. I'll do my best
gonna
to
be great.
earmuff you too.
Oh God.
No, it won't be too much. I'm just trying to be considerate.
Thank you.
No.
Appreciate
It's not like that. Okay. So today we're going to talk about Ruth Finley.
it. All right.
All right. Now, Ruth was born Ruth Smock, February 1st,
Okay.
1930.
Like a smock
in
you'd
Missouri.
wear.
Yes, like a smock you'd wear.
Like maybe she was a painter.
She wasn't, but yep, that's the
Oh.
right word. Her father was a struggling farmer and her mother worked from home. And when Ruth was just 15, she actually left home to go to Fort Scott, Kansas, which sounds like it's really far, but it's just across the border. So it was maybe 20 minutes from her
What year
house.
is this?
This is in the 1940s, so 1945. When she was
Wow.
15. And she went so that she could take classes that weren't offered in her hometown. She got a job at the telephone company and she was taking classes for typing and sewing because classes like that weren't offered.
Oh, okay. It's really practical
Okay. So,
stuff.
yeah. So she's really responsible and she lived in a boarding house. Okay.
How is that?
Now, what's a boarding house?
And I said, how was it? You know, I feel like boarding houses could be terrible or good. At least there's no chamber pots at this time of year. I mean,
This time of the year, you keep doing that. Well, in the fall, the chamber pots are put up.
You do not want to use a chamber pot in the summer. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, seriously. But on October 14th of 1946, so at this point, Ruth is 16. Ruth returns from the store and she's in her room and she's unpacking groceries. She hears a sound behind her. It's the sound of the sliding door opening up and a man comes into her room.
No.
He attacks her from behind. All she knows is that he's a white man in overalls who's about 50. She doesn't know who he is.
Oh my God.
Ruth is a fighter, so she's able to kind of like twist her body and she jabs her attacker in the eyes with her thumbs.
Brilliant. Another soft spot. This is my girl.
There you go. Add it to your list. This enrages him though. And he takes a rag doused in chloroform and he stuffs it in her mouth and she passes out.
So he was ready.
When she wakes up, he was burning the inside of her thighs with a flat iron.
What?
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure the details of the attack. Nobody went into them, but she survived it. It seemed like he ran off after that. She survived it, and she goes back to her parents' house to recover. And she does her best to move on after this weird, creepy, terrifying attack.
What the hell? Like, so he was just like sitting in her, you know, he's like waiting for her to get in her room and then creeped in and was ready with chloroform.
Yeah, so I think why he did that is because he said something along the lines of he was going to, because she went for his eyes, he said something along the lines of he was going to make it so nobody would want to look at her. Like he was trying to scar her. But it was just first degree burns, so it did.
Bro, you attacked her, first of all. You doink.
I don't think this, full deck of
He's a
cards here.
rational dude.
Yeah. So Ruth survives the attack and she just wants to move on with her life. And she does her best to create this life that's, an everyday kind of life. So she marries
Okay.
a man named Ed Finley, sounds fantastic, by the way. He's 2 years older than her. He's an accountant. She works at the phone company still. They moved to Wichita, Kansas, and they have 2 sons, and they have just this middle class, content,
Oh.
happily boring life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Which is exactly what she wants. So when both Ed and Ruth are in their later 40s, in the late 70s, 1977 actually, Ed is out working in the backyard and he collapses.
Oh, no.
Ruth is terrified that he suffered a heart attack, so she rushes him to the hospital, of course. And Ed is just her world, Ed and her 2 sons are her entire world. So
He has a
she
great
stays
life.
there waiting for all the test results, so running him through this and that. The doctors aren't sure exactly what happened, but there's nothing more that anybody can do, and he's stable. So they tell Ruth to go home, get some rest, and once they get the
Yeah.
results of the test, they'll know more and they can go from there. So Ruth
And they'll
goes
keep
home.
him overnight.
Right. He has to stay overnight
Okay.
for observations and until the test results come back
Right.
and they know exactly what's happening. So Ruth goes home. Now, Ruth is not accustomed to being home alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as he's an accountant, it's not like he's traveling for work or anything.
Yeah, it sounds like the 2 of them are together all the time. They have their 9 to 5 and then they're together all the time.
Oh, I love them.
They're pretty awesome. So she's not accustomed to being home alone, so she turns on the radio. But at this time in Kansas, the radio is inundated with updates on the BTK Strangler, who is a serial killer started operating in the 70s. And by 1977, he's killed 7 people.
Oh.
And so the airwaves are just inundated with that, which of course is not going to
Yeah.
put you at ease, right? So Ruth she switches it to something else and she's trying.
Turn the radio off.
She's trying just to, relax. I'm sure she's got some adrenaline rush going from the day. She's trying to just come down from it all,
It's a hard
relax,
day.
and then just get some rest. The phone rings while she's switching stations, and that, of course, gives her another spike of adrenaline because she thinks it
Spooks
might be
her.
the hospital, right? It's a
Yeah.
startling noise. Maybe there's news about Ed, so she rushes to get it.
Oh, God, I'm nervous.
A man's voice on the other end asks for Ruth Smock, which is her maiden name. Her name now is Ruth Finley.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks for Ruth Smock from Fort Worth, Kansas. The man then proceeds to read the newspaper article of Ruth's attack in 1946.
What the fuck?
Ruth acts like she doesn't know what he's talking about, which is smart, right?
That is super smart. Don't identify it.
And the man threatens to blackmail her and says he needs money or he's
With
going to tell
what?
everybody.
Oh, okay. You attacked people.
He's going to spread the word about her. I don't know if it's the same man. He's just saying he's going to spread news, or he's going to spread the word about this attack and let everybody know where she works. And he knows where she works. He mentions it.
Ew, creepy.
So Ruth is freaked out and she hangs up the phone. Tries to just forget it as some kind of sick prank, right?
Yeah. That'd be hard to forget, though, honestly.
I know. Ed, they find out the next day that Ed did not have a heart attack. Thank goodness. There was something going on from a previous injury, so he has to stay in the hospital for a little bit.
No.
Luckily, no other calls happen while Ruth's alone and Ed's in the hospital.
Okay.
So
good.
again, she just sick prank. Some weirdo found her out and thought that was funny when it was not. Later that summer, so this happened in June. Later that summer, Ruth is at work and she gets a letter, and that letter is the original clipping of the article where Ruth was assaulted as a teenager.
I'd be so freaked out.
Yeah, that is so vicious.
Also, I don't feel like it's a good threat. Like, it's not a blackmail to me. It's not something you should be ashamed of. You know what I mean? Like, she was attacked when she was a teenager.
I know, it's not her fault. The arrival of this article proves that, one, he knows where she lives and he knows where she works because he knows her home phone number. He's called her and now she's gotten this.
Dude.
She starts to get prank calls repeatedly at home, but nothing more is said because the second Ruth says hello, and realizes it's the man. She hangs up. If Ed answers, the person just hangs up.
Okay. Did she tell Ed about this?
She did not. She didn't want to worry him.
Oh, Ruthie.
So August comes and goes, and Ruth is out and about, and a random man starts talking to her. He kind of asking her these weird questions, and he approaches
Like
her on the
out
street.
in town or something.
Yeah, she's out running errands, and she's headed back towards her car, and this random guy just comes up to her, and he starts talking to her, saying weird things like, hey, you worked hard at the phone company this week. Hey, you doing anything for the weekend? I'm going to Vegas. He's just, hey, I like the way you, like, just being really strange, the things
Creepy.
that he's saying, and too familiar.
Yeah.
And Ruth tries to ignore him and just get to her car, and he keeps talking to her. So she finally says she's meeting her husband, which as women we know is a trick you
Yep.
do. And he ends the conversation by saying, I like your face. I'll see you again. You can
Ew.
count on that. Some people's fantasies are other people's nightmares.
What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell Ed and let's beat him up.
She did tell Ed about that because it was so strange, but you have to kind of understand Ed's point of view. What do you do with that? You have no idea who the man is. There's weirdo creeps on the street all the time. You know, he's definitely sympathetic, but he kind of just chalks it up to, he doesn't know about the phone calls, too, keep in mind. So he just chalks it up to some weird, random guy talking to his wife. So things kind of quiet down for the next year.
Okay.
All right. No more calls, nothing like that. But in June of 1978, Ruth is out in town again by herself, and she encounters that same man who she'd met the year before. He grabs her wrist and yells
Don't
at
touch me.
her to talk to him. So she, of course, twists away. We know she's a fighter, twists away,
Yeah.
runs into a department store and calls Ed. Ed had no idea about anything except this man talking to her previously. He doesn't know about any of the calls. So he contacts the police this time.
Yeah. I was about to say, let's move to
But
that step.
again, there's nothing really they can do. A random guy grabbed her wrist on the street.
I mean, could
We'll
she,
put our best
like,
guys on it.
you know.
Could she what? Play the flute? What are you doing? She's making
no,
a weird
the sketch.
a sketch artist.
Like,
Yeah.
to describe the guy and stuff and have
But
people look
the
for
man
him.
didn't actually do anything.
I mean, technically, isn't that battery? If somebody grabs you, I don't know. I don't know what it is
grabbing
back in the
someone's
70s either.
wrist to talk to them, I'm not sure. But in that fall of that year, so in October, Ruth gets a letter in the mail. This time it's filled with obscenities demanding money and saying they'll hurt her if she doesn't pay up. So Ruth and Ed go to the police with this.
Okay, good.
And again, that the serial killer, the BTK Strangler is still active, and the police are actually really worried that Ruth is on this guy's radar because he is known for sending letters to the media and things like that.
No.
And so they're really concerned that they don't know his MO or his vibe well enough to know that it's not out of the realm that he just starts sending it to his intended victims, right?
Man, they should like assign an officer to her when she's out in town. I know that's a little ridiculous, but if they had the resources.
So every letter that Ruth gets, she starts getting them regularly. She brings it to the police.
God, what a drain on your life.
I know. Isn't that so scary? Initially, the spelling and grammar is pretty rough and it's kind of like chicken scratched.
Not enough commas?
No, I mean, like, words are spelled not enough words are spelled wrong, and it's pretty vulgar language. You know,
Gross.
it's like pretty veiled, or not veiled, pretty clear threats.
Yeah.
And the phone calls start up again. Okay. So then November 21st of 1978, Ruth is again in town. She's crossing the street and a car comes to a complete stop right in front of her. And the man she's encountered twice before jumps out of the back of the car, kicks Ruth in the shin, and throws her in the back seat.
Oh my God. Is this like on a main street? Are other people seeing this?
Yes, it's on the main street. Another man is driving, but they've done it so quick, nobody has noticed anything.
What?
And the man hits her over the head with what Ruth described as like a piece of concrete. I don't know why that was in the
Oh my
car, but
God.
like a chunk of concrete hits her over the head,
Probably for that reason.
and she's doesn't go unconscious, but she's immediately subdued, kind of out of it.
Yeah.
They drive around with Ruth for hours, just talking about what they're going to do. They're going to rob her, and they're going to get rid of her, and all this stuff. Ruth finally says that she has to go to the bathroom, and
Nice.
they allow her to, but they take off her shoes and her jacket because it's November, right? It's chilly.
Bro, still go for it.
And at that moment, they went through Ruth's purse, but she had her purse. They let her keep her purse, and she has mace in there. So she casually reaches in and grabs the mace, and then when they're outside, she uses the mace from her purse to spray the man that escorted her outside the car, and then she takes off running.
Yeah, Rude, go!
It's cold, but she finds a
Yeah.
spot in the park and she hides, and she can hear them calling for her. It must have felt like forever. Like,
I'm sorry. These guys
I
sound
know.
like, oh, Ruth, come back to the car.
Well,
where
I
you
don't
got
think they're like,
kidnapped."
Ruth, dear. I think they're like, she can hear them looking for her and like
Yeah.
saying like, oh, if you come out, that kind of thing.
Right.
Now, this happened during the day, and Ruth never returned to work. So her coworkers had already reported her missing. So Ed knows she's missing, and he's frantic.
Yeah, it's his baby girl.
Eventually, Ruth waits as long as she can stand to wait, and she thinks it's probably safe, and she runs to a nearby store for help. The men had robbed Ruth. They'd taken money from her, and the police are seriously worried that Ruth might have been somebody to seen the BTK Strangler. They think maybe she's the only one who's seen him, and this is part of some weird
Whoa.
game he's playing.
Right.
So after this abduction, the letters keep coming, and the kind of incoherent blackmail turns into these rhyming verses. And it's things like,
No.
it's things like, here's to you, my tender Valentine, red with blood and tied with twine. Nothing too much for a Valentine, gone from here by a whim of mine.
Oh my God.
So she's getting these poems in the mail.
I would move to another state. I'm sorry. I know they have the perfect life, but it is not perfect anymore.
Well, obviously, yeah, I would say she would agree with you. Yeah. So like these letters kind of stop and start, then they stop for a little bit. Okay. And then there's
So
a break.
weird.
In August of 1979, so Ruth she's been through it. She's been getting phone calls. She's been getting blackmail letters. She's been getting things mailed to the office. She's been
3
getting
years now, right?
poems. So yeah, the first call happened in 77. It didn't really hit into gear until 78. She's been abducted. Okay. She's terrified.
Of course she is.
Terrified and living on edge every day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in August of 1979, Ruth is out running errands by herself again.
No.
On the way to the car,
Oh, God.
a man surprises her again. He has a red bandana, some wire, and tape, and he tells Ruth to get in the car. Now, again, Ruth fights back, and this man stabs her 3 times.
Is it the same guy?
On the third stab, the man's hand slips from the blood, and Ruth's able to use that to push him and hop in the car. She locks the door, and she drives away with the weapon still in her side.
Okay. She's amazing, first of all. But holy Jesus.
She drives to a gas station and calls for help from the gas station.
Probably the closest thing that was a little bit out of the way, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's high on adrenaline at this point.
And bleeding out.
And she doesn't just call like 911. She like dials a number that she knows from having dealt with the police so often in the last few years.
Get right to it.
And gets somebody. They tell her to stay there. They'll send somebody out, and she says no way, and she drives home.
Wait. Shouldn't she go to the hospital? She's got stabbed 3
When
times.
she gets home, Ed is, comes out and sees the
It's
horror,
like,
and
maybe
he
we need to see a doctor.
yeah, you're not supposed to remove a
Right.
weapon, right? So they move her over, keep the weapon in place, and he drives her to the hospital.
Jeez, Ruth is a badass, I'm sorry.
So she'd been stabbed 3 times, and one of the stabs had bruised a kidney.
Ouch.
So Ed at this point has named this guy the poet.
Okay.
That's how they refer to him based off of his. And so they are at the hospital and Ruth's under watch, right? The police are guarding her room because
Yeah,
what the
I mean,
heck?
that's one of the safest places for her to be right now.
And it's said that a man fitting the description that Ruth gave of this attacker actually came to the nurses' station and was turned away.
Arrest him! Or at
So
least bring him in for questioning. Oh, come on, guys.
Ed is feeling so helpless. I
Yeah.
mean, it must be so tense in the house. He starts taking out personal ads in the paper, trying to lure the poet out and get him to kind of
Huh.
entice him. So he posts these
Yeah.
ads in the paper, and the poet will sometimes respond.
Really?
But it's just with gibberish. I think he was hoping to maybe reveal some personal details or to kind of inflame the situation so he made a mistake, but he just
Got
kind of
it.
answers with this nonsensical rhyming verse and nothing comes from it. At this point, like you said earlier, police have cameras set up on the house and they monitor them regularly. They're going
Okay, good.
all out. The phone company has to come out and bury the Finley's telephone line because the phone line had been cut twice.
What?
Yeah. So they come out and they bury the line so that
Okay.
people can't do
Yeah.
that, and it helps them be safe. Ed is driving Ruth. She's still going to work, but Ed is driving her to and from work.
Makes sense.
I mean, she's never alone now. So they've got cameras all on the backyard. She's
Good.
escorted. She's only at work or at home with Ed, and they have somebody monitoring it at all times.
Ugh, but what kind of life is this?
In January of 1980, Ruth is at work and a butcher knife wrapped in a red bandana, which you remember the red bandana
Mm-hmm.
her
The
attacker
wire
had when
guy.
she was stabbed, is sent to her work with a poem that says, "Shut your eyes and think of the 12-inch blade. Will you remember the hole it made? Dream of me and obey my commands. Think of me with a knife in my hands."
Ew.
Yeah. If that doesn't ruin your
Ugh.
day, I don't know what will.
I don't know why they haven't moved at this point.
I mean, he could just find her. Her whole
I know
life
he
is
did
there. Why
find
should she
her.
have to move?
I know. I know. Sucks.
So letters like that just keep coming. And he also starts to escalate and contact local businesses in town regarding Ruth. And what I mean by that is, for example, he would contact the funeral home, letting them know that Ruth would need their services shortly.
Bro. That's a threat.
Yeah. And at this time, the BTK Strangler is still on the loose.
Hmm.
And the behavior starts to escalate. So now things are being left in the Finley's front yard. Gross things. Jar
Oh,
of
God.
urine, feces,
Ew.
Molotov
Ew.
cocktails, shards of glass. Around Christmas time, Ruth and Ed are downstairs. They have a family room,
Mm-hmm.
in the basement, and they're watching a Christmas movie, and they hear a loud explosion, and Ed runs upstairs, and somebody has lit the Christmas wreath on their door on fire, and it
What?
exploded, broke the glass.
Jeez.
And Ed is able to put the fire out very quickly, but I mean, it's nonstop.
But the cameras shouldn't have picked them up or no?
Yeah, the cameras find nothing. And Ed, this is the kind of husband Ed is, so that Ruth can sleep, he would often not sleep, but go in the backyard with his shotgun and stand guard.
I feel so bad for them. I hate this guy. Hope he comes to a bad ending.
So the police are honestly putting a ton of work into this. They've got I mean, they're really trying. They've got sketches of this guy, like you said. While you asked earlier if they did that, they've got sketches of this guy. They've got cameras. They've got total surveillance. They are offering as much protection as possible. I mean, they're really, really trying to catch this guy, partly because they think it might be associated with this serial killer that's on the loose. And also just because this is scary as all get out, and they're trying to find out who is doing this. So they're going above and beyond. And then the chief of police, he's not really involved in the investigation, right? He delegates it. He has detectives on the case. So he knows about it, of course, but he's not actively involved in the investigation. But then a letter arrives and his wife is mentioned in it.
No.
So he says, okay, that's enough.
Roll up the sleeves. Chief's coming in, baby.
Yeah. So he takes the file and he goes home and locks himself in a room and spends hours poring over every single letter in that file. He's like, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
And within 24 hours, he goes back to the station and he assembles a small secret team. And he says, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the Finleys under surveillance, and we're not going to tell them because obviously somebody, as soon as we had cameras in the backyard, things started happening in the front yard. So maybe somehow that information's getting leaked, right? He's like, I have a theory, but I want to test it. So we're gonna survey the Finleys and we're gonna see what happens. So they have a helicopter on the Finleys and they have police tails.
I mean, wouldn't that be kind of obvious? So I'm trying to imagine like what kind of neighborhood they are. Like probably like a suburban middle class white picket fence neighborhood.
Probably.
Imagine.
I mean, if I see a helicopter, I've never once thought, oh, they're watching me.
No, I know, but like we've also been in like really urban place. Like, you know, when we lived in LA, helicopters were it was an everyday occurrence. But like here, I'm in the suburbs here, and when I see a helicopter, I'm like, somebody's getting flown to a hospital. Anyways.
But if the helicopter was high enough too, it's probably just to keep a spot on where the car goes so they can tell the people on the ground. It's probably not just hovering over it, hoping to see things.
Yeah.
Right? It's probably just
with the binoculars.
Yeah. It's probably just like turning right on Main Street,
Right.
That's probably how it's working.
Yeah.
So a few days into the surveillance, the Finleys are out running errands and they pull over to one of those blue post office boxes, and Ruth puts a bunch of mail in and they move along. It takes a while for the tail to catch up, but when the tail catches up, it opens. It has the USPS open the thing and they take the letters out before they're mailed to see what's in there. There is a personal letter, there's a bill, and there are 2 letters from the poet. So they think, okay, was the poet following Ruth that closely and we missed it? So they do it again. They follow again for a couple days. And again, Ruth mails letters. Some are from the poet.
Wait.
And the chief has his suspicions confirmed. He believed that it was either Ed or Ruth were the poet.
What? My mind is blown right now.
So the chief brings Ed in to see if he's involved. And Ed is just shocked beyond all shock. His totally seems genuine reaction. He agrees to a polygraph, whatever they want to do. He passes it with flying colors. And they tell him, we think Ruth is the poet.
Whoa. She got stabbed 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? I don't even know.
So they search Ruth's office and they find evidence that they can't ignore. Things like a letter that was delivered that was torn. The exact torn piece is in Ruth's notebook. Like they match identically. Like she clearly ripped it out. There's a book of poems. There's pencils, pens that match. Pieces of red bandana.
What? What? I don't understand.
So Ed's initial reaction, honestly, he's not even mad. He's just relieved that his wife is safe.
Okay, but she's working with somebody and she got stabbed still.
The police confront Ruth. And she doesn't, honest to God, doesn't really have any memory of any of this.
What?
And so they check Ruth into a psychiatric ward to observe her and keep her safe. And the investigation costs the police close to $400,000, but they decide not to press charges because Ruth is in intensive therapy, and the therapist honestly believes that Ruth has no memory of these actions.
Like she has a
So
split personality or something?
they believe she was having a dissociative identity episode, so DID, dissociative identity disorder. And through therapy,
That's
it's
crazy.
discovered that Ruth had actually been severely abused as a child by a neighbor
Mm,
who used a red bandana
Baba.
to tie her up. And she had no memory of that either. She had blocked it out.
She blocked it out.
And so, I mean, this is just, I mean, Ruth is confused as all get out.
I
She
can't.
doesn't remember it, but there are so many things that they're showing her, like it's coming from her notebook.
That adds up.
She, like you said, you said it before, you said these abductors don't make any sense
They don't.
because they don't make sense. Like, why would you drive somebody around for 4 hours and not do something, and then you're like yelling through the
Right.
woods for them? And they went to the scene and they only found Ruth's footprints. There was nobody else.
What?
Yeah, I mean, there's so
How
much
can
to
the
unpack
brain
here.
do this? That's
Isn't it
like it's just
unbelievable?
crazy that the brain can do something like that.
So, a couple things I want to talk about. I
What?
want to talk about DID a little bit because it's so fascinating. It's really rare. Only between 1% and 2% of the population live with this disorder. And Hollywood has done a job of making DID seem like your other part is, a serial killer and the other part doesn't know
Like
it,
really villainous.
yeah,
I
which
mean,
is
the story doesn't help, but
not the case. And this story doesn't help either. This is so unusual. This is so unusual. But Ruth was never hurting anybody else. I mean, she really wasn't even, except herself. Ruth was never hurting another person. Now, there is a show that came out in 2019 called Many Sides of Jane, and it follows a woman with DID, and it's fascinating to watch if
is
you're
it
interested.
fictional?
No, it's real. It's a
Oh.
reality show, and it follows her. She has several different parts. And it's interesting because lots of times she's conscious of the other parts coming forward. That's what she calls them, her parts. They come forward and she knows and she remembers. But there are certain parts where she also has dissociative amnesia from it. So there's one part in particular, when that part takes control, she doesn't remember anything. But that part is never dangerous. That part just does different
Okay.
things.
Just
Like
does
she doesn't
different
remember
things.
going to the store. So that's one of the main things she wants.
Wild.
Why she agreed to do the show. She said, I want people to understand that people with DID are not dangerous.
Just not just stabbing everybody on their other parts.
Yeah, we try to work together with my other parts. I try to understand it. And it's almost always, always, always stems from severe childhood abuse and trauma. And it's something
which
that
makes
the
sense,
brain
right?
creates.
You're trying to
to protect you.
like extreme compartmentalization.
Exactly.
Like extreme. Like
Exactly.
I need to put this away because it's so fucking painful.
Exactly. That's
and
how
then
Jane
it's gonna
describes
shatter
it.
and create different stuff.
She says it's like she has boxes in her head.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of
that.
the parts know about the abuse and they have that. And then the other parts don't know about it. It's to keep them
just wanna
safe.
give them hugs.
Yeah. And so Ruth's situation is really different in the fact that there's just one other part and she has absolutely no memory of it. And it's a self-harming part. That's unusual. But people with the idea are high risk for self-harm, and treatment is psychotherapy and medication like antidepressants, because as you can imagine, there's a whole slew of things that come along with it, like anxiety or depression, because you don't know what part's going to show up and when.
Oh my
and you
God,
lose gaps in time. It's hard to be consistent. It's really fascinating to watch. I recommend it. I think even you would like it. It's not scary.
Really?
Because Jane has 2 children and she never knows who's going to come forward. And so all of her parts take good care of her children, and their main goal is to keep them safe.
Stop.
But if she has the part come forward where she has amnesia, and like she doesn't remember what has happened, like what her son had a bandage on his arm and she came back to being herself, and she had no memory of what had happened, and the other part had, wrapped it and taken care of it, but she was worried and scared. And so she has to set reminders and notes and have, like a whiteboard with everything on it so that all of her parts know what has to be done and when it has to be done.
I have so many questions specifically about Ruth's stuff. Like for example, when they were all watching a Christmas movie, who set the wreath on fire?
Yes. Okay. So that's the part that's so fascinating.
There's somebody else.
Yes. That's what Ruth says. And so Ruth was actually on Oprah, and Oprah at one point and did an interview on Oprah, and she says the same thing. She said through years of therapy, she says she finally does remember stabbing herself, but it took years to recover that. And she said she just kept telling herself she had to do it, and she doesn't. She thinks, so what she thinks happened, what Ruth thinks happened, is that she had repressed the childhood trauma. Plus, she says that attack at 16 was also true.
And she probably didn't work through that either.
Happened. And in 1977, when Ed had his suspected heart attack, plus the BTK Strangler is alive.
Yeah, I was
She's home alone.
After what period of time? Like, I wondered if maybe that first letter was a real person, or what triggered her going back into this state.
So she said that triggered it, and she started to bring up things for her because of everything that was going on. And also she said she thinks that her other part started acting out to keep her safe, to let the police take it seriously, to get police presence, to get police surveillance, to keep her safe, because she was so scared from everything that had happened to her before. And she said there are parts of it I did not do. Like, she said there really was a man on the street who approached me.
Yeah,
I didn't make that up.
Like the whole wreath thing.
Yeah, she said, and I didn't set the wreath on fire. I was in the basement. Yeah. So there are things that she didn't do. And she said, and I don't remember doing all of it. She said, I believe I probably did certain things like the urine and the feces and the Molotov cocktails. But she said, I didn't set the fire. I couldn't have. I was with Ed in the basement.
Exactly. That's what I keep thinking of.
So that's another thing that she
stabbed herself 3 times.
I know. And they had said originally that it was not medically, it was not physically possible for her to have done it.
Because of kidney.
No, it was in the back. She stabbed herself in the back.
Oh, God. That's some good shoulder mobility.
Oh, man. So she said she thinks that there was a man that accosted her on the street, and that also triggered it. That escalated the behavior. So all of those.
Wow.
So I wonder if she wasn't getting harassed a little bit.
I think there was something, because there's some things that, like, okay, you don't remember things, but you still did them. But okay, it's physically impossible for you to have been there and do them is another thing.
Yeah, so there was, and who knows, when something like this is crazy, people are so mean. Like, it could have been a high school kid or some jerk who set the wreath on fire. Like, we'll
That's
scare
true.
her.
Yeah.
So who knows?
God,
but
that's just, think about Ed, who I guess never noticed these things happening, right? He never noticed that she was doing certain stuff.
Well, it always happened. I assume she was doing it from
he was at work. Right?
Or she was mailing the letters underneath a stack. And the brain is so amazing. It doesn't want Ruth to know either. Right?
It's just so crazy to think about.
So it's protecting both Ruth and Ed from knowing.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Ed and her kids stood by her and 100% said she didn't know. No, there's no way. They stood by her. She did years of therapy.
Yeah, I was wondering how her kids handled it too.
They said there's no way that she made it up, she was having a dissociative identity episode.
Were there any reports of her like being weird at work or no?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Everybody described her as just the nicest woman. Just really nice. Her and Ed were super friendly.
Yeah.
Just nice, solid people. And it was
That's what it sounded like.
I mean, she is. That's what she was. And then this other part of her just acting out and acting up when these things triggered it.
Wow.
Ruth went through therapy and did her best to put this behind her. And, she just felt terrible and embarrassed. And she
Of
said,
course.
some people didn't talk to her after that. But a
Yeah.
lot of people did. She did interviews and explained it as best she could, and a lot of people actually believed her and understood.
That's cool.
She had it's not her fault. I mean,
Right. It's the brain trying to protect her from trauma.
yeah, I mean, I would be willing to
The
blame her
trauma literally
abusers.
changes the brain.
Yeah. This is the ugly side of healing. She was abused on 2 separate occasions. Like, some disgusting jerk took advantage of a 3-year-old. That's how old she was the first time, and then a
Fuck.
16-year-old.
Hope they died painful deaths.
And this is what her brain did to keep her safe and protect her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, her
Exactly.
case is unusual. DID is not
Right.
usually this kind of sensational,
Yeah,
but it's so
right.
fascinating.
It's just
And
the factors that were going on at the time with the
yeah,
serial killer and stuff.
anybody living with DID, like, oh, it sounds so challenging, and they deserve so much credit.
Right? Imagine, like, we think life is hard.
Yeah.
Imagine having to handle all the parts coming in and out.
Yeah, and I was telling you, I had a brain fog from COVID, and it was so scary to not remember you texting
Yeah.
me. That's their life all the time. They
Right.
different parts. Jane in that series was saying sometimes she'd wake up and end up in another house, and she's like, I don't
Oh
remember
my
agreeing
God.
to this, or knowing where I was, or
Yeah.
she'd
Right.
she'd come to somewhere else.
That's
Jane would
so
come back to the front,
scary.
and she'd be in a store that she doesn't remember going into.
Wow.
Ruth and Ed stayed together. Ed died in 2011.
Oh,
Ruth died in 2019 at the age of 89.
wow. Good.
I
I'm
know.
glad that's a good ending.
An unbelievable story. It's amazing what your brain will do. And I presented it like that because Ruth believed at every point that this was happening to her. Her terror and her fear was real.
I want to congratulate you because you did it so well. Like, I feel like this is the most my mind has ever been blown in one of these stories. Like, that was like a twist I was not expecting at all. That was really good.
Well, that's
That was
because
good.
I have the advantage of you never knowing any true crime things that ever happened. So most people might know the story before it starts.
That
But
was so
that's how it
cool.
was for Ruth. Like, she truly thought all these things were
Right.
happening. Can you imagine having to go back to work after you felt like you were abducted by 2 guys on the street, and your life was threatened, and really it was just you driving around for 4 hours and you don't know it? It's so scary. It's so scary. A lot of even the police
That's wild.
officers, a lot of them felt for Ruth, even though they'd
Yeah.
had wasted I'm
Yeah.
air quotes, their time and their money. Like, they believed, a lot of them believed Ruth too. They had seen her,
That's cool,
and
though.
they knew, like, this is something else. This is not just somebody trying to get attention or
And the
anything like
chief
that.
figured it out.
The chief figured it out when his wife was
Is it
threatened.
because so do you think Ruth mentioned his wife because she wanted, or that part of her brain wanted him to figure it out
I'm not sure.
and get involved? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know if that part of her was wanting to just keep going, or if that part of
Right.
her was some sort of secret cry for help.
Right. Like, as it escalated, it could get more dangerous and dangerous.
Yeah, and that's how he figured it out, because he thought it was so strange. Why would anybody mention my wife?
Right.
That's
And not like
odd. And then
completely dissociated from the situation.
yeah, and then the letters always stopped when the Finleys were on vacation. Things like little
That was
things like
another
that.
weird part, is like, did the serial killer get busy? Like, oh,
Yeah.
really stressed at work, or like, oh, I ran out of pencils, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, Ruth and Ed are so likable
Yeah.
and so nice and sweet, and it's just so sad that they had to go through that.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they finally figured it out, and Ruth was
Me
brave
too.
enough to get help. I mean, that's
Yeah,
really
that's hard facing that. Can you
Yeah.
imagine?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It finally ends. So you've had this reign of terror for years, and you've been feeling it, experiencing it as if it is happening. And then you have to take the blame for all of it. And you're embarrassed and you're ashamed. And she pushed through and went and got help and did years of therapy and
Right,
kept
like
going.
facing that trauma. I mean, that's a lot. You have to be really brave to do that.
I'll stand by it. Ruth is a fighter in all aspects, right? She fought when she was 16 and she just kept on fighting just in different ways, even if it's against her own brain who's trying to save her from the trauma.
Right.
I mean, that takes a lot of courage to get help and stay in the same town and live your life. So that is the story of the poet who is Ruth Finley.
That was wild.
There you go.
That was a really good story. I'm really glad it ended well, too.
Yeah, that's why I didn't think I'd have to earmuff you, because I knew it would unscare you at the end, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Because there were talk of other serial killers. I was trying to keep it light for you. How'd your tea hold up? How'd your two-thumbed tea hold up?
It is still two-thumbing. It's great. I just vibing. It's in a good mood. Listening to this crazy story. It's good stuff. Thanks, special listener.
Talk about terrifying. That's the voice I imagine poor Ruth heard on the phone, for God's sakes.
No.
Terrifying. All right. Well, we actually had a story recommendation, so I will try to bring that to you next time.
Thank you for sending that in. Other special listener. Okay.
Gonna come up with new names. I'm working on researching it and hopefully have it ready for next week.
Cool.
Alana's gonna love it.
Yes.
Yeah, don't research it because you saw the request. So
I didn't. I just looked it up.
Don't.
I just briefly.
No, do not look it up.
I looked it up briefly. I didn't. I just remember the name. That's it. I'm good at compartmentalizing too.
No, I don't think.
But not to that degree. Yikes.
To that level.
Well, hopefully.
You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at
Tea Time Crimes. We've been posting lots of fun stuff like alleyways and puppies. That sounded weird, but
the puppies meeting. And you can email us at
teatimecrimes@gmail.com. We've already gotten lots of tea recommendations, a story recommendation. Keep them coming. We love to hear from you. Please tell your friends, your family, your enemies, your lovers, all of the above. It really helps. We found that word of mouth has done a lot for us. Okay, this is getting a little weird. Sorry. Just spread the word,
okay? Just start naming relationships at the end of every podcast. Like, just tell people, guys. Just rate, review, subscribe, and tell people. Alana's going to go through. Your second cousin once removed. Your carpenter. Your pharmacist.
Carpenter.
You just start naming weird associations.
Yeah.
Tell people.
Tell the people.
All right. We hope to be back next week, God willing.
Yes.
And the isolation needs to end at this house. Golly. All right. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Ooh, brought it in hot there.